This is Michael Popak, Legal AF. If on your Georgia election interference bingo card, you had Harrison Floyd as the person most likely to go back to jail and have his bond revoked because of his bad behavior while he's been out on bond, you'd likely be a winner. Now, this doesn't shock me. I had Harrison Floyd on my bingo card. Harrison Floyd, just to remind everybody, is about to be sent back likely to jail because he keeps attacking and intimidating witnesses in the DC election interference case where he is a co-defendant with Donald Trump. Why is that bad? Why isn't that First Amendment? Because you don't have a First Amendment right when you're an indicted felon or indicted soon-to-be convicted felon like Mr. Floyd and the rest. You lose your rights because now you're part of the criminal justice system, which supervises your release. In fact, Judge McAfee set certain conditions. They were very easy to follow. They were simple and direct. It said, don't attack witnesses. It said, don't attack co-defendants. Don't talk about the case directly or indirectly through social media or otherwise with all of these people, right? Just be a Boy Scout while you're out until your trial. So in the beginning, Mr. Floyd thought that was permission for him to attack by name and with disgusting misogynist postings and pictures, attack Fani Willis, the Fulton County DA. He did that over and over again. Then he turned his attention after he's been out on bond since August to starting in November, to start attacking witnesses by name, including ones that have just pled guilty, are now convicted criminals, and used to be lawyers for Donald Trump. Oh, I don't know, like Sidney Powell or Jenna Ellis or Ken Jespro. Those are names that should never be in Harrison Floyd's mouth or on his fingertips in social media because of his bond conditions. So Fani Willis has had enough, right? Enough is enough. And so she filed today, or her office filed today, state's motion to revoke the bond conditions concerning Harrison William Prescott Floyd. Now, let me tell you a little bit about him so that you don't have a lot of empathy or sympathy for him. First of all, he was already in jail once because when Jack Smith's special counsel in the DC federal election interference case tried to serve him, or his FBI and marshals tried to serve Mr. Floyd in Maryland with a subpoena to appear before the grand jury for Jack Smith, he assaulted the person who was serving the subpoena on him, leading to him to be arrested. That was before Fani Willis indicted him in Georgia as a co-conspirator with Donald Trump. And things have just gone downhill for Mr. Floyd ever since. Mr. Floyd, who used to be the head of Black Voices for Donald Trump and likes to lean into the race card whenever he can on all of his social media. Now, one of the things that I found really rewarding is that when the Fulton County DA filed their motion, they reproduced a series of social media postings for Mr. Floyd. Now, they couldn't capture all of them. I mean, they filed it today at 3:30. Since today at 3:30, he has continued to post ad nauseum every half hour like his hero, Donald Trump. I will read from some of the new ones that Mr. Floyd has posted since this brief was filed, which, you know, you'd think maybe the motion itself would have a chilling effect on Mr. Floyd's continued acting out and lashing out. He is represented by counsel, after all. It was that counsel who, during a hearing today, participated in a protective order and knows that a protective order is or is about to come out, preventing all of the parties from revealing certain information into the public domain. Certainly, nothing will change about the bond conditions. So when you look in the brief, and we'll put it up on the screen, but here's my favorite one. When they were reproducing all of the offending social media posts that went after Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell, and Jenna Ellis again and Sidney Powell, and Ruby Freeman, the Fulton County election worker who's about to get $40 million plus from Rudy Giuliani in a defamation case. She's involved here too because of the pressure campaign put on her by Donald Trump's people, led by Harrison Floyd. In there, in the reproduction, here's my favorite. I'm going to hold it up. On paragraph 11, the state attorney, the Fulton County DA, reproduced right from Harrison Floyd's Twitter account or X account, something that he had tweeted from the MeidasTouch network. So of all the tweets in all the world, Fani Willis had to walk into MeidasTouch. So MeidasTouch has made the filing by the Fulton County District Attorney because they had to reproduce something where Harrison Floyd, was inappropriately bashing again Jenna Ellis, and he did it by retweeting or re-Xing something that he found on the MeidasTouch network. See, we have a big, wide tent that lets everybody in, including people who have been indicted for a felony for election interference in Georgia. So let's talk more about Mr. Floyd. I did a hot take about 2 weeks ago. You can find it on my playlist, in which I said, we're going to have troubles with Mr. Floyd. He was bashing by name in misogynist tones, in vocabulary inappropriate, sexist, misogynist ways, fat shaming Fani Willis, putting up cartoon characters who he said look like Fani Willis. And I said at the time, this is not the way to win the hearts and minds of people, right? You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. You know, you're going to need this prosecutor's office to cut you a deal. But at this point, not only is he not going to get the deal as I predicted that he wouldn't, but he's now going to put himself likely back in the Rice Street jail, which will make it very convenient for him when he needs to get to trial, because they'll just take him out of the jail and bring him right upstairs to the courthouse. Apparently that's what he wants, but he doesn't really want that, because now he's attacking Fani Willis in racial tones again on social media, because he doesn't like the fact that she's moving now to revoke his bond. So particularly, he's using vocabulary that I won't repeat, that Clarence Thomas used when he ran into some turbulence, I'm putting this nicely, when his confirmation hearing in the 90s, and a lot of women came out of the woodwork, including Anita Hill, accusing him of being a sexist, a sex abuser, and other things. When they all came in to testify against him, he used a very charged phrase about what he claimed, Clarence Thomas claimed, was happening to him on television. And so Harrison Floyd has decided that he is the modern day Clarence Thomas, and the same thing is happening to him at the hands of Fani Willis, the Democrat. And so let me just read you a few of these social media postings that didn't make it into the 3:30 filing today by Fani Willis. So he has one here that says about Clarence Thomas. He did this an hour ago. Clarence Thomas was right. This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. And then he took a quote from Clarence Thomas at his own confirmation hearing to try to show he's got some sort of kinship with Clarence Thomas. Interesting choice of justices. He then went on to say he's very upset, apparently, and he did this right before and after this motion got filed to revoke his bond, that his legal team was blamed for the leak of the proffer videos that a lot of people have seen now, including on the MeidasTouch network, of Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Ken Chesbrough, and the like. And particularly, the reason that the district attorney told the judge that it could be possible that Mr. Floyd's own lawyers leaked it is because Mr. Floyd's own lawyers wrote an email that said they did. Now, later they said they made a typo, that they meant to say they were not the source of the leak when they wrote they were the source of the leak. Well, you could imagine the confusion for the district attorney. I mean, you get an email that says somebody's confessed to the leak, and, you might want to put that in your motion papers when you're moving for an emergency motion. Well, he didn't like that. And it turned out, by the way, that his side didn't leak it. It was Misty Hampton's lawyer, for reasons unknown, or the reasons unclear, who's the Coffee County former election supervisor, who has also been indicted for her role in tampering and interfering with her own election equipment and having voter information confidential voter information revealed to Sidney Powell and others. That Misty Hampton, that lawyer decided it was a good idea to release all the videos because it would counterbalance what the district attorney has done with the filing of her indictment. And you got to have, the public needs to know is the argument. So Harrison Floyd, whoops, wrong one. Harrison Floyd decided he doesn't like that and he wants an apology. So he put in social media, similar to what his lawyer did today in court. He said, I want an apology for the wasted time and I want my lawyers compensated for the wasted time of being accused of being the leaker. He said specifically aimed at the Fulton County DA. Fulton County DA said, my team was responsible for the leak and the emergency motion. They knew it was false and did it anyways. As a result, my attorneys were harassed by the media. Typo. I want a public apology and for you to compensate them for wasting their time. You got 24 hours. I mean, he's talking tough for a guy that's about to end up back in the Rice, the jail next to the courthouse at the rate he's going. And so that didn't make it into the cut because that came out later. But all the other attacks on Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, Ruby Freeman, Dan Scavino, and anybody else that is reflected and reproduced, including the MeidasTouch one, ended up in the moving papers. And what she's argued in that, and let me just read from it quickly before we go back to Mr. Floyd again. She says, or the filing says, that of course on August 14th, after he was indicted, there were certain bond conditions that were set. In particular, on August 29th, the court entered a consent bond, meaning that the prosecutors agreed to it, setting the bail and ordering the defendant to comply with certain conditions. 1, the defendant shall perform no act to intimidate any person known to him to be a co-defendant or witness in the case, or to otherwise obstruct the administration of justice. That's on page 2, paragraph 2, little a. Little b, the defendant shall not communicate in any way, directly or indirectly, about the facts of this case with any person known to him or to her to be a co-defendant in this case, except through his or her counsel. And little c, the defendant shall not communicate in any way, directly or indirectly, about the facts of this case with any person known to him or her to be a witness in this case, except through his or her counsel. And then the tweet storm started. November 1st of 2023, multiple tweets to try to intimidate Brad Raffensperger and Gabriel Sterling. Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia. Then he went on a podcast on November 6th in which he tried to intimidate Jenna Ellis by name and talked about her by name. This is after she had already cut her plea deal. Then on November the 7th, he attacked Brad Raffensperger and Gabriel Sterling of Georgia, of the Georgia State House again. He then, on November 7th, attacked those two gentlemen again. On November 13th, he went after Jenna Ellis and Dan Scavino, also likely witnesses in this case. Then he did it again on the 8th, going after Brad Raffensperger. On the 12th, after Jenna Ellis and Sidney Powell, calling them liars, serial liars, unethical, and the like. On the 13th, he went after Ruby Freeman a number of times. It carried over to the 14th on Ruby Freeman. He's got about 7 or 8 against Ruby Freeman. And that carried on all the way through the 14th. As I said, it was a lot on the 14th. He had about 8 different attacks on Ruby Freeman. And so finally, the state attorney's had enough. And so what she's asking the judge for is the following. That as detailed in paragraphs 13 through 21, witness Ruby Freeman has been a frequent target of the defendant's intimidating communications. And he's already been charged in the indictment for influencing witnesses involving Ruby Freeman. So he's going after the same victim he already victimized, for which he's been indicted. And so she goes on to say in her filing, and she signed this herself, you can see right there, Ruby Fani Willis's signature. And so here's what she wants, right? She wants, she wants his bond revoked and him back in jail because he cannot comply with the terms of his release. And Floyd doesn't like it. Now, look, I'm not shocked by this. He was the last out and he's going to be the first back in. right? I don't know what we call that. I think we call that loafy, last out, first in. And that's going to be Harris and Floyd, but it's no shock. I mean, the drum beats for this and his becoming more unstable and unhinged have been going on for quite some time. You don't post pictures of a sort of a slightly overweight cartoon character and put it next to your prosecutor, and you think that'll engender some sort of goodwill on the behalf of the person that has the keys to the jail in their hands, along with Judge McAfee. But, this guy's completely out of control. He wants to make himself a martyr. He thinks he's some sort of, I don't know, Steve Bannon or Mike Flynn or something like that. And all it's going to do is now there's going to be a hearing. There's going to be an opposition paper to this. And I'm sure Judge McAfee, who runs an incredibly tight ship, is going to hold this hearing probably early next week. And I can just hear the lawyers for Mr. Floyd now. They're going to say this is a vendetta by the prosecutors. They've been going after my particular client since the beginning. They wouldn't let him out on bond, which is his fault. He'd already assaulted somebody before and he couldn't find a lawyer. Then they'll say this whole issue about the email exchange where they had a typo about whether they were or were not source of the leak. And then they embarrassed the district attorney during the hearing today. And so to retaliate for the embarrassment, and they don't like my client's First Amendment rights, and he has the right to have First Amendment rights. Therefore, they filed this motion while Fani Willis was at a fundraiser, because she's also a politician, for Democratic causes. It's all political witch hunt. Listen, I could do the argument right now, and I could just see Scott McAfee, because I do a pretty good Scott McAfee too, saying, okay, unless you have a case that tells me that your client's First Amendment rights trump the conditions that I have set in his order, I am concerned, and I'm not hearing anything that alleviates my concern, that your client is using his social media posts to intimidate and try to corrupt witnesses, which is not a good thing considering your client has already been indicted for doing just that. I don't think it's a coincidence that Ruby Freeman was the target of his ire and his attempts at intimidation. So here's what I'm going to do, and that's the open question. Is the judge going to throw Floyd back into jail for violating the terms of the conditions of his release? Or is he going to give him another shot and do something in a progressive fashion, a warning, a fine, strengthen the conditions of release, or the like? We'll have to see. McAfee is a sober jurist. He seems to be pretty apolitical. He's really an umpire calling the balls and strikes. We've been impressed with him here on the MeidasTouch Network as he brings this plane in for landing for a trial sometime early next year. He'll preside over a jury trial in that regards. Now, some people might be asking, what about Donald Trump? Why are they sending this guy back for violating the conditions of his bond? Hasn't Donald Trump done that? Well, that's an interesting observation. Donald Trump is raging out of control against Democratic judges and prosecutors in places like New York and in the District of Columbia. And he's lashing out there, challenging them and basically goading them into gagging him, fining him, and maybe worse. But he's not doing that about the witnesses in Georgia. He's been really eerily quiet in Georgia. He certainly doesn't go after Judge McAfee. He doesn't really go after Fani Willis too much, although occasionally you see it. And he doesn't talk about the witnesses too much that are there in Georgia, because I don't think he wants to play with Judge McAfee. And if he gets convicted in Georgia, that's not going to be pardonable by a federal a president under the Constitution. And he doesn't do that with Judge Cannon too much down in Florida. So we'll have to see. I think this is going to be a good test case to see how Judge McAfee applies his conditions of release to a first-time, or in this case, 40-time offender brought to his attention with the motion to revoke bond. And that will be, I think, the template, how he will even-handedly apply it to somebody like Donald Trump. So his lawyers, like Steve Sadow and Donald Trump himself, better keep his ears open about how this is going to be handled, because Donald Trump could be next although Floyd has made himself the test case based on his own outlandish conduct. We'll continue to follow all of the Jan 6th insurrectionists, indicted felons as they move towards trial and their conduct leading into it. And on, hot takes just like this one, and in our MeidasTouch Legal AF podcast, the title is exactly what you think it is. It's every Wednesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The three leaders of Legal AF with our collective 75 years of legal experience in courtrooms and courthouses, just like this one. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. We think it's important to bring it to you. Occasionally, we end up in the news or in the filing, as we did today with the filing by Fani Willis's office, a Fulton County DA, taking something ripped right from the social media posting of Mr. Floyd, who's obviously a fan or a follower of the MeidasTouch network, and we bring it to you right here. And then we curate a podcast, as I said, called Legal AF, and you can get it on that platform and on YouTube. Free subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. It is free. It is helpful. They are a grassroots media company with no outside investors. Help them get to 2 million. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popak reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.